This is my new Ford Fusion. It's a typical family car. It has plenty of space in the back, a pretty sizable boot, but it only has 79 horsepower. Our goal in this video is to see how much faster we can make this car by firstly taking out the engine, we can pull, and replacing it with a much bigger engine. Then we will try and start it, and just maybe we will even get it driving. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. So before I show you what engine we've bought for the Fusion, there is something we have to do first. And that is a 0 to 60, because we are going to compare the time that the car achieves now with the time that it can get later after all of the work that we do to it in this video. So 3, 2, 1. Come on, car. And that's 60. What do we get?
15.4.
15.4, it is a very slow car. So to improve on that, this is what we've bought. This is a 2-litre performance engine taken straight out of a Fiesta ST. And it has around 150 horsepower, meaning when we fit it in the Fusion, we will be doubling that car's power. And on top of that, by installing this particular engine into this particular car, we will sort of be making a Fusion ST, which never existed because Ford never made a performance version of this car. So with all of that said, let's get the Fusion on the ramp and get started. Now, with this being a Ford and not something German or Japanese like I'm normally used to working on, there is actually a little bit of a different technique to taking the engine out with this. And it's actually to take off our headlights, our bumper and our front panel. And then once that's done, there are sort of some lifting eyes in the engine, and we have to strap an engine crane to those lifting eyes. Once we've undone the engine mounts, we can then lift the engine out and sort of out of the front like this, rather than what we normally do, which is taking off the subframe and then lowering it onto a pallet and then lifting the car over the engine. If you've watched the channel, you'll know about that. So yeah, that is the technique we've got to use. Right, okay, so where are we going to start? I think we need to chop off the exhaust, and we also obviously need to remove our drive shafts. But after the drive shafts and the exhaust are out, that is literally all we need to do under here. Everything else is up at the top. So we have got our favourite friend, Mr. Reset. So let the chopping initiate. There we go. And now that's off, we should be able to, out he comes. Easy. So now that I've removed the exhaust, I can now move on to taking out the drive shafts. Oh, lovely. Cool. Oh my God.
Literally,
this car is coming apart so easy. Oh, I've said it. No, touch wood.
We are safe.
We're safe, we are safe. There we go. Almost out. Take him out. So as we expected, taking the front off the Fusion has given us so much access to the front of the engine. We still have to remove the header tank. There are also our gear selector cables which sit behind this little plastic covering. Our fuel lines need to come out, our big brake servo vac line at the back of the engine bay. There are probably still a couple coolant lines as well, but we are really nearly there now, so let's keep going. So I could continue with the teardown and get through the list I had in my head of everything I had to disconnect and remove. And for those of you wondering what was on that list, it was pretty much all of this stuff. So I basically cut down the big job of removing the engine into lots of little jobs, which makes it more mentally manageable, and it just helps me crack on and get it done. And as I was disconnecting and removing everything and learning how it all worked, I was starting to think that Ford might be the easiest brand of car I have ever worked on. Everything was really logical, there wasn't any really stupid design decisions that made me want to rip my hair out. I was actually really enjoying working on this car.
Oh, nice.
That's pressure doing pressure things.
Physics.
Physics, exactly. So once I had got through my list, the final thing I had to do was disconnect the rear engine mount, and then we could remove the engine. Engine is now wobbly. That is now everything disconnected from the engine. As you can see, it is pretty wobbly in the engine bay. Nothing is now connecting the engine to the car except for our engine mount. So we can go ahead now and get our sort of purple strap and put it through our lifting eye number 1, which is just in here. Here we go. And pull him through. Get him through here. Now we can get our engine crane. Okay. We'll get him in. That's got a decent amount of tension now. So now we can get our gun. We can undo these. And last, there's one more big bolt, should be holding it in. Now, in theory, the engine should just come straight out, so. That's why I said in theory. See, I forgot to undo these 3 bolts, so these have got to be undone as well. And come off. Right, now it should come out. So, give it a little pull. Oh, one thing we forgot to unplug. It was the Ace, that's for the air conditioning. That's the only, I think that is the only thing we've got to unplug. Oh, there was 2 things. Oh, and the coolant's going everywhere. But yeah, this as well. There we are. Now, we can pull. Something broke. I can't see anything connected. Something sounded like it broke, but I don't know what. And this is still against this. We can get him out. Oh, it was just, okay, it was just a little bit of plastic from there. That was all it was. Yeah, just a bit of plastic that got caught. But there we go, ta-da! That is one 1.4 engine removed from our Fusion. And actually, it looks really similar to the 2-litre engine that we're putting in it, doesn't it? It looks literally exactly the same. Yeah. But it is not very fast. This is only 79 horsepower, so it is good that it's coming out. So this is what I mean. I think the engines look really similar, but if you look closely, there are a fair few differences between these engines. But the main one is that this is 150 horsepower and that one is only 79, so it's pretty much double. Now, unfortunately, we can't just plonk this engine in and connect everything up and expect it to work. There are a fair few parts off of the Fiesta ST that we actually need to use to make this engine work with our Fusion. So I'm gonna make a big checklist now and go through everything, so let's do it. So the first thing we need is the ST engine, wiring loom and ECU. And of course, we already have that. The ECU and the wiring loom both come with the engine. We also need the ST instrument cluster and the key. Now, these both need to have come out of the exact same car that this came out of because the ECU needs to work with these 2 things to sort out the immobilizer, basically. We also need an ST coolant header tank, and I have that here. We also need 2 random coolant lines, and I have the 2 random coolant lines right here. We just need them, so we've got them. We'll also need the ST radiator, and I've got one here. We will also need the ST battery and tray, which I also have, and this is gonna make sure that we have enough juice to start up the engine. And we're going to need the ST fuel tank and fuel lines, which I have right here. The reason why we need the new fuel lines is that they are just different, and we need the ones that work with the engine we're putting in. As for the fuel tanks, they're actually the exact same, but the ST one has an upgraded fuel pump. We also need the ST drive shafts, which I have right here. And finally, we need the ST driver side engine mount, which I've got right here. So if my calculations are correct, all of these parts on the floor will allow us to install the Fiesta ST engine into our Fusion. So with all of that said, let's get the engine in. Right, so first things first, we are going to take off this fuel tank because the fuel lines that go from here into our engine bay, they need to be fit now, or else it would be a real pain to get them fitted when the engine's in. So we're gonna undo that 30mm bit of bolt, we're gonna undo him as well, and we're gonna, can't speak, we're gonna undo him, and then it is just a fuel lines to disconnect, an electrical connection to disconnect, and then the fuel tank will come down. So let's do it. So we're gonna start with... Do you know what's actually quite mad? What? I think this is the newest car we've ever worked on the channel.
Yeah, actually might be.
This is a 2010. This is like brand spanking new in comparison to everything else we work on. There we go. There we are, I got it. Nice, we need 10s to undo this. Set the fuel line off. Odds you drink it. One and four. 3, 2, 1, 3.
Oh. Returns. 1, 2, 3, 2. Oh.
Nice. There we go. There we go. And now you can see our 2 fuel lines that we need to disconnect and also our electrical connection that we need to unplug. There's one. Whoa. Whoa. That is our fuel tank out. So now the old fuel tank was out, I could get started with fitting our ST fuel tank. Okay, I reckon we can connect up our fuel lines as well now. That is one fuel tank in. So before getting on with anything else, I firstly decided to clean up the engine bay because it was looking a little bit dirty. But once I was done with that, I could then focus on getting the engine mounted up. Now, there is absolutely no science to bolting in an engine. You just have to try and line up the bolt holes in whatever way you can. But after a bit of persuasion and a lot of determination, we got the engine mounted up. Engine in. Boom. Okay, big momentous moment. Is that a word? Momentous. I think it's a word. Momentous, we're going with it. Look at that. Engine is in. This is the world's first. It probably isn't the world's first. But anyways, I'm going to call it the world's first Ford Fusion ST. The engine's in, so it is now officially an ST. But we now have the mammoth job of just connecting everything up. That's like the loom, the gear selectors, the fuel lines, the AC lines, the coolant lines, the power steering lines, everything. So that is what we're going to crack on with now. Let's keep going. Now, something a lot of you might be wondering and thinking is 150 horsepower. It's going to make this thing very fun. But the title of the video was making the world's fastest family car. It probably won't be the world's fastest family car after getting a 150 horsepower engine. And you would be right to think that. However, this is only episode 1. We have a lot of plans for this thing, and it probably still won't be the world's fastest family car by the end, but it'll be pretty quick. It'll be, I'm thinking it's gonna be beating a lot of things on the road after we're finished with it. So you're gonna have to subscribe with that big red button below this video, and you're gonna have to find out what we do to this thing to make it the world's fastest, not really world's fastest family car. So after getting the rear engine mount bolted up, I could then move on to installing the passenger side drive shaft. There you are. If you're wondering what our exhaust solution is for our Fusion ST, it is this little guy right here, that tiny thing. It's a tiny bit of Fiesta ST downpipe, and it's gonna do for today and for our first drive. Obviously, we will be putting a nicer exhaust in this at some point, but this is gonna have to do for today. And it's just gonna sit in there like that. So after our very professional exhaust install, I could then get on the other drive shaft. Yeah, obviously with all the bolts, I never use a gun. I always just ratchet them because it's just so much more professional. Yeah, people that just gun everything up, wind me up.
So once I had fitted the ST coolant header tank, I could then move on to our gear selector cables. And believe it or not, the cables in the Fusion are exactly the same as the ones in the ST. So I could just go ahead and fit the Fusion's old cables. There was of course a few electrical connections to plug in as well. Alongside our fuel lines, I could also plug in our heater matrix pipes. Also, the main connection between the Fusion's body loom and the Fiesta ST's engine loom also had to be done up. Alongside that, I could plug in the brake servo vac line, also the clutch line. Next, it was in with the battery tray support. I also had to ground a few earth wires. And I had to mount up the ECU. And then I could get the battery fitted. Other jobs we needed to do included filling up the gearbox oil and also bleeding the clutch.
We are making some pretty good progress with our Fusion ST. The next step is to get on this front panel, and we actually firstly need to remove the standard radiator and put on the ST radiator, which I showed you earlier. But once that's on, we can then get this fitted. Well, that is got to be the world's easiest radiator change ever. Nice.
After connecting up all of the coolant lines to our radiator and the AC lines to our AC condenser, I could then get on with building back up the front end, including the front bumper and the headlights.
Along these days, sip from the bottle in a smoky haze. Pour me some Pinot, let's listen to the Beatles.
And whilst I was at it, I could also get the wheels back on. And also fit a tiny little ram air induction kit.
So there we have it. Our Ford Fusion is now back looking like a car, and it now has a Fiesta ST engine fitted into the engine bay. I think that looks really cool. It's proper OEM, I think. Obviously, this is the same platform as the Fiesta, so it fits in really well. And yeah, we are almost ready to start this car. There are still a few other jobs we have to get on with, such as an oil change. We've got to fill it up with coolant. We've also got to swap over the speedos and do something minor with the key as well. But once all of those little jobs are done, we can go ahead and see if this thing starts. Who the bloody hell tighten this up? Moving? Yep. Oh my god.
So after I had topped up the engine with some fresh oil and also bled the cooling system, we could then move on to changing over the speedo. So I've got to replace this standard Fusion speedo with the Fiesta ST speedo I showed you earlier. And to do this, it's pretty simple. There's just a few plastic trims to remove, 2 bolts to undo, and then the speedo can just pull out. And once that's done, the Fiesta ST speedo is literally a direct fit and it can just plug straight in. So on top of these speedos being necessary to actually get this car running and driving, they also look a lot better than the standard ones, I think.
Okay, now all of that's done, the final job that we've got to do before we can try and start our fusion is to do some swapping over with the keys. So this one here is the fusion key, and this one is actually the Fiesta ST key, which matches up with the engine, ECU, and rev clocks that we've just installed into the fusion. So this should basically sort out our immobilizer. And what we've got to do is basically just pry off the end of that. So that's the ends off, we don't need that. And then we pry off the end of this one. Boom, don't need that. And we put the end of this one on the body of the Fiesta key. So that's now our fusion key on the Fiesta ST body, if that makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense. Anyways, let's see if this works. It is the big moment. Let's see if this thing starts. It should, in theory. Technically, it should. Fingers crossed, everybody at home. Fingers crossed. 3, 2, 1. It cranks. I heard a fire. I think we just need some throttle. Interesting.
How much fuel have you got?
Oh! None. That makes sense. All right, let's fill it up with fuel and then we'll try again. All right, jobs are good in. Right, take 2. Let's see if it starts. In 3, 2, 1. Build up fuel pressure. Come on. Oh my God, that is loud. She's mint. She's absolutely mint. Ladies and gentlemen, it lives. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely mental. Oh my God, I've got to do it again. This has got to be the angriest car we have ever built on the channel. I mean, the Jazz first start was up there. That had flames and everything, but this just sounds ridiculous. This is going to be crazy to drive, and it will drive, and we're going to go and take it on the first drive. It is the evening though, and I'm going to wait until tomorrow morning to drive it. So I will continue this video tomorrow morning, and we'll go and take it on our 0 to 60 and see if we can beat our time from the beginning of this video. I think we will, but by how much?
It is the next day. It is time for the first drive. We've got Jav coming along for the drive. You haven't heard this thing start yet?
I haven't heard it start yet, so...
It is very loud. Oh my God, this thing is so loud. Upgrading really badly. I have no words.
Fast and loud.
It's more loud than it is fast, to be honest. This thing is like just the loudest thing I've ever driven. Right, it is now the moment of truth. How much faster can we get our 0 to 60 in the Ford Fusion? Let's give it a go. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
massive improvement. All we need is an exhaust. We really need an exhaust.
I know, it is going to hurt.
This car is, it's the loudest thing we've ever done. It needs an exhaust so badly. I feel sorry for everyone in a 5-mile radius. But we managed to get a 7.8 second 0 to 60, which is a massive improvement. This is my Ford Fusion, and it just looks like a normal family car. But in the previous video, we removed the standard 79 horsepower engine, and we replaced it with this 150 horsepower engine, which came straight out of a Fiesta ST. And by doing this, we doubled the horsepower and half the 0 to 60 time. 7.8, that is not bad. In this video, the goal is to see how much we can improve this car's handling by firstly removing all of the standard parts, and then we'll install thousands of pounds worth of high performance modifications. That looks unreal. And finally, we'll give the car a test drive to see just how much it's improved. However, before we get on with transforming this car and make it handle like it's on rails, there is one massive problem with this car that a lot of you might remember from the previous video, and it has nothing to do with how the car drives and everything to do with how it sounds. It is ridiculously loud, and this car is in dire need of an exhaust, so we're going to head over now to the exhaust company. So for those of you who don't know what our exhaust looks like, our current exhaust, it's basically non-existent. As you can see, there is nothing. This is where it's supposed to go, all the way around here, no exhaust, and that is where it ends. So we literally don't have an exhaust on this car, and that is why it is so unbelievably loud. But we're gonna get a full custom stainless, beautifully TIG welded exhaust fitted onto this. So it's gonna sound a lot more manageable on the road, and it's also gonna look really cool under here. So let's get started.
So seeing as the Fusion currently doesn't have any exhaust whatsoever, the guys here at the exhaust company are going to have to build the full exhaust from the downpipe all the way back. Now, because at the minute the Fusion is so unbelievably loud, I asked the guys to install not only one, but 2 silencers to make sure that the car is quiet enough for road use. And as for actually building the custom exhaust, it is a pretty intricate process, and it involves a load of cutting of stainless pipe, measuring and mocking up, and then of course TIG welding.
That is going to be our exhaust tip. It's a rolled exhaust tip, which is very Ford apparently, so that's what we're going to fit on.
'Cause my mother told me as a child, boy, don't play around with fire, 'cause you might just end up getting burned. And I know the wicked never rest, so I always try my best, but there's some lessons hard for me to learn. Like good boys don't play with.
The exhaust is done, and it is looking absolutely sensational. As you can see, we went for 2 silencers, and that is really going to help reduce the exhaust note, that horrible loud exhaust note that the car made beforehand. And it also has just some really nice welds on there. And if you're wondering what the guys at the exhaust company use for their welding, it is the R-Tech welders, which obviously do a really good job. So now all we need to do is get this on the car and see what it sounds like. Josh, when you're ready. Give us some revs. That sounds sick. We are now back, and I tested the exhaust on the way back to the unit, and it does sound really good when driving, but you're gonna have to wait until the end of the video when we test drive the car to see what exactly it sounds like when we're driving. But for now, we can move on to the handling mods, and the first thing I wanna show you is our new wheel and brake setup. The wheels and the brakes that we've gone for are the Fiesta ST wheels and the Fiesta ST brakes. A lot of you probably expect this, but I just think these absolutely scream Ford performance, and they will look really cool on our Fusion. But there is a bit of a problem. They are in terrible condition, all 4 wheels, and also our brakes. Take a look at our front caliper. That is not very good. Very mucky, and so is our rear caliper, very small, but also in bad condition. So all of this stuff needs a refurb before we can put it on the car, and there's only one place we can go to do that, and that is 360 Alloys.
Now, 360 Alloys specialise in wheel refurbishment and bodywork, so we're going to leave our new wheels and brakes here and come back for them later on in the video.
Okay, so now that's done, we can move on to the first thing that we need to do to massively improve the handling on our Fusion, and it is actually to install this rear beam. Now, like a lot of the parts that we've got for this car, this is off a Fiesta ST, and you might be wondering, why is this going to help the handling? Well, one specific reason. These little holes in here, those are the rear caliper mounting brackets, and they only come on the Fiesta ST rear beam. They do not come on our Fusion rear beam because that has drum brakes. So we needed to fit this if we want to fit our rear brake setup. So that's the reason why we're fitting it. It's quite a big job just for those tiny little mounting brackets. But I think what we're going to do first is give this a refurb, because as you can see, it is in dreadful condition. There's just so much like mud and rust. It needs a clean up, it needs a wire wheel, it needs a paint. So we're going to get on with that first, and then we'll get it fitted.
So when I began the process of refurbishing this Fiesta ST rear beam, I didn't quite realise just how much work I was signing myself up for, because it was really rusty. The first step was to clean everything up with wire wheel attachments on power tools. I used the angle grinder for the main sections and the drill to get into all of the little corners. I also had to remove the bushes that were fitted into the rear beam, as I would be upgrading these later on.
That is horrible. That is the most indescribable smell.
But once the rear beam was as good as we could get it with wire brushes, we could then move on to cleaning it all up with some brake cleaner. And the next step was to hang the rear beam up using the engine crane and make sure it had 2 or 3 coats of matte black paint. Also, if you do enjoy these videos, now would be a great time to subscribe, because it massively helps out the channel. So once all of these different parts of the rear beam had been painted, we could begin with the reassembly. Now, to finish the reassembly off, we've got to fit new bushes into this part of the rear beam. And instead of just buying new bushes, I decided to upgrade to a full set of PowerFlex polyurethane bushes. Now, bushes, or bushings as they're sometimes called, basically just connect your suspension components to the chassis of the car. And polyurethane is a much harder, more durable material compared to rubber. This means that installing polyurethane bushes in replacement of the standard rubber ones will make the car feel more responsive, stiff, and they'll just overall make the car handle far better, and they'll last way longer. So the finishing touch for this rear beam refurb was to add on our new brake dust covers, which had just arrived from eBay, and once those were on, our rear beam was basically looking brand new. So now the rear beam is looking beautiful, we can focus on getting it installed. Of course, to do this, we quickly had to remove the old rear beam, and then to get the new one fitted, it's just 3 bolts on either side to mount it up.
The rear beam is now in, and it is looking absolutely 10 out of 10. I am so glad we went to all of that effort to make this look this good, but our shocks are letting the team down a little bit, so don't worry, we are going to be changing those a little bit later. I think it's the next mod we've got, but for now, we need to basically do the exact same thing with our subframe. We're going to take this down, give it a bit of a refurbish, and also get our other bushes fitted onto this.
So to refurb our front subframe, the first step is of course to remove it. Now, it's not in quite as bad condition as the rear beam was, but to satisfy my OCD, this thing still needs to be refurbished to the exact same standard as our rear beam. Now, with the subframe, there are actually more components, such as the anti-roll bar, the lower arms, and also the anti-roll bar mounting brackets. So whilst it is in better condition, there is still a lot to do. Now, at this point, a few of you might be wondering if we are replacing our front anti-roll bar, and we are actually not going to do that. Instead, we are just going to refurb the old one, and the reason behind this is that the Fusion actually uses the exact same anti-roll bar as the Fiesta ST, so there's no need to upgrade it. Either way, after a very long time attacking this rear beam with the wire wheels, it was then looking good enough to paint. So we firstly cleaned it up with some brake cleaner, and then again it could be hung up on the engine crane to paint it matte black. But once that was done, we could begin with the reassembly. And after we had finished, the front subframe was looking absolutely immaculate with all of the matte black paint and our polyurethane bushes. So then the final thing to do was to get this subframe refitted.
It is a big moment. I know it's only been a few minutes of video of you watching us refurb the rear beam and the subframe, but it has taken us a really long time, and I can now show you the finished product with our completely painted in black subframe without a speck of rust on there, may I add. We've also got our PowerFlex poly bushes. These are the things that are really gonna improve our handling. And now it is matching the rear beam with, again, our poly bushes, our completely refurbed bolts, the black paint, and our new brake dust covers as well. We have gone to the minute details to please everyone in the comments, so I hope you like it. But now that's done, we can move on to a much more predictable modification for one of my builds, and that is a set of BC coilovers. Now, I know it is a bit of a broken record at this point. I have fit BC coilovers to literally every single car I've done on the channel, but you know what they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. These work tremendously well. They're my favorite coilovers. They've never let me down. They make the car handle amazingly, so let's get them on.
This is a shakedown.
We're gonna make the comments very happy today. We are cleaning. Proof. This is proof.
Once that first coilover was fitted, I could then move on to the other side.
And that is our second coilover in.
And now that's done, I can move on to doing the rears. So after getting the BC shocks mounted to the top mount, I could then fit the whole assembly together with the new springs.
Take a look at our new coilovers. I am so proud of it under here. It looks like a new car with our fresh new exhaust, our beautiful refurbished rear beam, and now our shiny coilovers. But you might have noticed that we fit this little bracket under here, and we've never done that before. It is pretty unusual, and you might be wondering, what on earth is it for? Well, it's actually for the next modification. And here we have that next mod. This is a rear sway bar, and it is for when we install this rear sway bar, it has something to mount onto. I'm not sure, I'm not sure how it mounts up quite yet. We'll figure it out, but this is just gonna massively improve the rear feel of the car. It's essentially an anti-roll bar for the back, and it does make a huge difference, especially on a front-wheel drive car. So again, let's get it on. Right, okay, so do you want to go in first? There we go. Right, yeah, mine are in line. It's a workout, isn't it? Right, mind up, mind up. Mind up. Right. Yep. Done. That is one rear sway bar fitted. And next up, we have a strut brace. It wouldn't be a handling mods video on my channel without a strut brace. For those of you who maybe are new or don't know what this thing does, it will sit on top of the top mounts where the shocks come through like that, and it's going to help increase our chassis rigidity. Essentially, when going around a corner, the actual body of the car, like the actual chassis, sort of flexes, and it sort of just ever so slightly flexes and bends. This helps reduce that. It increases the rigidness of the chassis, so it helps increase handling responsiveness. So let's get it on. Okay, so our strut brace is on, our rear sway bar is on, but now those two things have been installed onto the Fusion, our brakes have just come back from 360 alloys. Well, I think these look practically brand new. I am so pleased with how these turned out. A massive thank you goes to 360 Alloys for doing this all for us. And again, if any of you watching this need wheel refurbishments, brake refurbishments, or any bodywork done to your car, then make sure to contact 360 Alloys. I'll leave all of their contact information in the description of this video. But for now, we haven't just got these calipers for the Fusion, we've got a lot of other stuff as well. So 3, 2, 1. And this is all of the other stuff. We've got a lot here. So firstly, we have our new brake discs. These are dimpled and grooved discs from EBC. Those are our fronts and these ones are our rears. Again, dimpled and grooved. As for brake pads, we decided to go for these EBC yellow stuff pads. Those are the rears and these are the front ones. And again, they're just a really good compound for road and a bit of track use. And they're actually the exact same brake pads that I fit onto the Serra in the previous video, for those of you who watched that. And also in the previous video, we installed braided brake lines onto the Serra, which is again what we're going to do on the Fusion, because these are a massive sort of helper to make the brake pedal feel just so much better, especially when your brakes get hot. And also, we've got our Mark 6 Fiesta ST hand brake cables, which are going to make this rear caliper conversion work perfectly, I hope. So with all of that said, let's get all of this stuff fitted. First thing we want to do is remove this little clip, that little guy. Boom, off he comes. Next, caliper pins, these little guys. Actually, before we finish undoing that, we're going to have to remove our brake line. Here we go, shaft the muscle. Whoa, there we go. Brake line. God, these are, I cannot tell you how much easier this is coming apart than the Serra. It took me all day to do the brake lines, because the brake lines were like, no, we've been on it for 34 years.
We belong.
We are not coming off. That should now come loose. There we are. So now we can remove our caliper. Nice. Get him on.
Damn, already looks sick.
Looks good, doesn't it? Now our brakes are together, we can get on the brake line. Boom. Okay, and then we need a clip there, just tighten it all up. And that is all done. Look at how beautiful that looks. Now we just got to do the exact same thing on the other side. Right, so we are now finished fitting our brakes on the front. There is our passenger side, and we have also done the driver's side. So we can now go ahead and move on to the rears. Right, so as for doing these rear brakes, the first thing we've got to do is actually to remove the exhaust. And the reason why is the handbrake cables. If you take a look, this is the old handbrake cable, and it tracks all the way to behind the exhaust heat shields. And the only way we can access where we need to access to swap the handbrake cables over is by removing the exhaust and then also removing the heat shields. So that's what we've got to do first. Good thing is, brand new exhaust comes apart very easily. Oh, actually, we need to undo these as well. There we go. Lovely. And now, easily you can see that is where our handbrake cable comes up here. So we just need to swap this out for our new ones.
So I could go ahead and disconnect the old handbrake cables and then remove them off the car. And our new Fiesta ST cables are just a straight swap, so these were pretty simple to fit.
You can get him and he'll just go up there somewhere. And then it can come up and go through there.
So once the new handbrake cables had been installed, I could then work on getting the exhaust back together. Then we could get the bit of metal bracing refitted, and we couldn't help ourselves but refurb this as well.
Looks good, doesn't it?
Does look good. Now with the triple.
We've got the triple refurb. We've got the black subframe, this black random piece of metal, and now the black rear beam. It's like very difficult to start refurbishing when you started.
Literally.
It's like, actually that could be refurbished as well. Oh, we could refurbish that.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what we could do when we get this off? We could refurbish it. Get him on first. That's in.
So after getting that side done, I could then get the final corner installed to finish off this brake upgrade. The final thing to do to make our Fiesta ST brake system fully operational was to bleed the brakes. Now essentially, bleeding the brakes is just simply opening and closing the bleed nipple on each of the brake calipers to remove the air that might be in the brake system. Now, I'm sure many of you may have seen other content creators use a vacuum bleeder to do this more efficiently, but since I don't have one of those, we did the old-fashioned method of getting your mate to sit inside the car and move the brake pedal up and down whilst you open and close the bleed nipples.
All the way back up again, and then down again, and then all the way up again, and all the way down again, and then all the way up again, and all the way down again. And you're good. That was it, that was pretty quick.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is safe to say that our Fusion has just spent a full day at the spa. We've got our beautiful strut brace sat up there, our Fiesta ST brakes, which we've just installed, our braided brake lines, our BC Racing coilovers, our brand new drop links, our fully refurbished subframe with poly bushes, and if you come round to the back, we of course have a full caliper conversion which works with our handbrake cable and our braided line. We've got a fully refurbished rear beam with poly bushes. We've got our custom exhaust, our rear sway bar, and all of these mods are going to make a huge difference to the handling and the way this car drives. But what I really want to do first is get the wheels on, get the car down, and firstly see our ride height, because we've not seen that yet with the coilovers, and also I want to test out the brakes because we have just bled them. But to do those two things, we need to see our new wheels. Well, I think we can all agree these wheels are looking loads better. I'll put some pans over now of what these wheels were looking like at the beginning of this video. They were not in very good condition, but now they have been completely transformed by 360 Alloys. So again, a massive thanks goes to them. But there is a problem. These wheels have pretty rubbish tyres on them. They're pretty cheap, just rubbish tyres. And obviously, we want to make the Fusion a race car, and tyres are actually one of the most important handling mods you can do. So these are what I've bought. These are a set of Accelera 651 Sport tyres, and I got these from Tyre Streets. Now, we've heard really good things about Tyre Streets and also these Acceleras, and I want to make it clear this isn't a sponsored video, but I just wanted to test these tyres out and see exactly how good they were and how much they could improve the performance on the Ford Fusion. So before we do any of that, we've first got to get the tyres fitted onto these wheels.
So to do that, I could get the wheels packed into the new daily driver, the Audi A4 1.9 TDI. You can let me know what you think of it in the comments, and then I could take it to the tyre shop where they quickly fitted the tyres onto the wheels, and once they did so, they were looking pretty cool. But then I could get all the wheels back to the unit and fit them on the car.
I think we can all agree that that is quite possibly the best wheel, tyre and brake combination. Look at how goddamn beautiful that is. Oh my God, I am in love with it. It says Accelerate on the tyres as well, which means fast. And oh, that is just the perfect combination. The rears are looking cool as well. Oh, it just looks so good. I mean, I do think we are gonna need some spacers on this, but that is a later problem. For now, let's get the car down and see what it looks like. How low is it gonna be? Oh my God, that looks mental. No way, hang on. Down, oh dear. Oh no, I can't get the ramp out. That's how low it is. Oh my God. That looks unreal. Oh my, look at the, do you know what I love? The red from the strut brace like matches the brakes. Yeah. Look at that. That's so cool. Okay, we need to make this red or black. That's what we need to do. But oh my days, that looks unreal. Do the brakes work? The brakes work! The brakes work. Oh my God, the brake pedal feel is I can already feel the braided brake lines. It's so much more responsive. I'm well impressed. I'm so happy with that. That is 10 out of 10. So what we need to go and do now, before we take this out on its first drive with all the mods, is we need to get everything sort of dialed in together and set up properly. And there's only one place to go and do that, and it is Evolution Auto Works.
So we came here to Evolution Auto Works to get a proper motorsport alignment. Now, whenever major work has been done to the suspension, it's always a good idea to get the car aligned properly, not only to make sure that we don't have increased tyre wear, but also to get the most out of the handling upgrades that we've just fitted so that the car drives the best that it can. Now, Adam is doing something here called a string alignment, which is basically where a piece of string is hung around the car, which can then be used as a reference to make small adjustments to the alignment. And if any of you guys need any motorsport or mechanical work done for your car, I will leave a link to Evolution Auto Works in the description of this video. But once Adam was done and the Fusion was perfectly aligned, I could go ahead and take it out for its very first drive.
Okay, so we are now out in the Fusion for the first drive after all of the mods. The first thing I want to test is the exhaust note. Exhaust sounds good. And also brakes. Whoa! The brakes are mental. Hold the brakes. That brake pedal feel is 10,000 times better. That has made a huge difference. Those braided lines are actually a really, really good upgrade. For 100 quid, it has transformed the way this pedal feels. But also, we're getting a lot more stopping power. The brakes feel amazing. Okay, that is definitely the highlight so far, but already I'm noticing how like planted it's feeling. Just with all of the work we've done with the rear sway bar, the strut brace, the BC coilovers, our poly bushes, it's all working together to make this car feel really just planted. Yeah, it's handling really well. This is going to be a track weapon. This is my Ford Fusion and I'm trying to transform this car into an ST. To achieve this, we've already installed this Fiesta ST engine, which doubled the output from 79 horsepower to 150. We've also installed a load of handling upgrades, such as a full Fiesta ST brake setup, BC racing coilovers all round, and a whole lot more. So the goal in this video is to completely transform our Ford Fusion yet again by doing a full paint job in a color which is completely mental. To do this, we have to completely strip the car back back to almost a bare shell. Then we need to do a massive amount of prep work, and by the end of the video, we can lay paint on the bodywork and get everything back together to make the ultimate Ford Fusion ST. Okay, so getting our Fusion painted is going to be quite a lot of work, and I know there are going to be a few of you wondering, what color are we going? But you're going to have to wait until a little bit later on in the video to find that out. For now, the first thing we've got to get on with is completely stripping the car down. And this is the part of the project which I hate the most, because the car looks pretty good right now, and it's a pretty good package as it is. But I think to make the perfect Fusion ST, we really need to go for a cool color on this. And the color I've got planned is absolutely mental. So let's get started. So we now have to completely strip the Fusion down, and to do this, we're going to start off by removing the engine. Okay, so the first main thing we need to do to remove the engine is to, of course, take off this front panel, and Ford make it nice and easy for us, but there's one annoying thing that we've got to do if you want to take this off, and it is to disconnect the coolant lines. And on practically every single coolant line on every single car ever, they have these really annoying clips, as you can see. If you work on cars for a living, that probably gives you nightmares. So I've bought something to fix my inability to undo those clips, and it is this hose removal kit, which has all the tools that we need. And I think this one here, I've scoped it out, that is going to be the perfect boy for the job. So let's give it a quick test and see if we can take it off. Okay, put him on like that. Squeeze that down. Oh, look at that. The worst thing about doing that with a set of pliers is the fact that they just slip off all the time. And with these, they literally don't. Engine out. Whoa. 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 Wait, it's nice and warm though. It's like the perfect temperature. It is literally like bath water temperature.
It is like bath water.
So once I had disconnected the coolant lines and drained the coolant, we then needed to take out the AC lines.
Oh, perfect. Now the rad pack can come off. There we go.
So once the front panel had been removed, I could then crack on with disconnecting and removing everything else in the engine bay. This included stuff like the battery, the wiring loom, the heater matrix pipes, fuel lines, power steering lines, and even vacuum lines. And I also wanted to take out the strut brace as well, as this obviously wouldn't be staying fitted for the paint job later. Next, we could get the car up on the ramp to disconnect everything that we needed to underneath, starting with the exhaust. Okay. Then it was out with the drive shafts. And then lastly, we could undo the bottom engine mount. With the engine now loose, the last things to disconnect were the clutch line and the gear selectors.
There we go.
And once that was done, we could then work on lifting the engine out of the engine bay.
There we go. And I mean, because we're painting the engine bay properly, we need to remove most of the things out of the engine bay anyway. So the engine mounts need to come out, the coolant header tank needed to come out. A lot of other things are going to have to come out. We're going to try and strip this as much as possible so that we can paint it as well as possible. But anyways, before any of that, let's get this engine out. I think it's free. There we go, ta-da! Engine is out.
So now the engine was out, I could start with removing everything else out of the engine bay. This includes parts like the AC pipes, the heater matrix adapter pipes, and the ABS system. But whilst I'm doing that, now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel, because I found out that 75% of you watching are currently not subscribed. That is most of you watching this video. So if you do enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe, because it's completely free and you can always change your mind later on.
Keep our heads up high, pushing on like a chugging train.
Okay, so that is now absolutely everything in the engine bay stripped that we need to strip for this paint job. The rest of this stuff that is in here is going to be masked up. and it's going to stay here for the whole paint process. So that is everything now done in the engine bay. But now that is finished, we can move on to the rest of the stripping, and there is quite a lot to do. So firstly, little things like the indicators, those need to come out. Our wing mirrors need to come off. All of these little plastic trims around the doors need to come out. The door handles need to come off. Also, our door cards, the window glass, which is behind it, that needs to come out as well. And then the same thing needs to happen with the rear doors as well. And that is why having a 5-door car is a little bit more difficult to paint than a 3-door car, because there's just a lot more stuff to strip and a lot more stuff to prep as well. And then moving on to the back, we've got the tail lights, those need to come out, that badge, that badge, that badge, that light, the whole rear bumper, the number plate as well. And actually, speaking of the rear bumper, we have a little sort of crack in this one, and we need to source a new one, which we have. We have a brand new rear bumper just there. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff to strip. Let's get started. First step, pop this off. Next step, screwdriver. One little screw. Okay, next step, we need to pop this thing off here. And that is our plastic trim removed. It's got a little...
Oh, that's
There we go. I think the rest of it's held on with clips. There we are. So that is one door card done.
And after the door card had been removed, I could then take out the door handles, the door mirrors, and also the indicators. I could then repeat that process on all of the other doors. Now, like I said earlier, we do have to remove the window glass and also the sort of black plastic inner door card that you see behind the main door card, but we will get onto that later. For now, after the door cards have been taken off, I wanted to get the rear stripped as well. Now, a lot of you might be wondering how we are actually planning to do this paint job when I have absolutely no experience painting cars. Well, the answer to that is I called some backup.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Lav, and many of you might recognise him from previous videos because with Lav's help, we have already painted 2 of the previous project cars on the channel, the Volkswagen Fox GTI and the Honda Jazz Type R. Now, Lav has almost 2 decades of body shop experience, and thanks to that experience, both the Jazz and the Fox turned out amazingly. So there's no one else better to help us make the Ford Fusion look absolutely mental.
So I think there's a tiny little bit more stripping left to do. I think we've got like 10% more.
Yeah.
And then we can just go full steam ahead with all the prep stuff.
Another one.
Another one, yeah. Number 3.
So now Lav had arrived, he could help me out with the last little bits of the strip down. We focused on taking out the window glass and the black inner door cards. We could crack on with removing all of the badges as well. And also this plastic trim which goes all the way around the car. We need to take these off as well because we're going to be prepping them separately and also painting them in the body colour. And then the last thing to do was to go around the car with this tool called a toffee wheel, which attaches onto the end of a drill, and that's to remove all of the leftover adhesive tape. But once I was finished with that, the Ford Fusion was then completely stripped down.
Okay, so that is now the Ford Fusion completely stripped. As you can see, the engine bay has nothing left in it, and obviously no engine. We also have our doors, which have been completely stripped as well. No door cards, no nothing on the inside, which is what we want. And then same with the back doors. And finally, the boot is also completely stripped. So now all of that is done, we can move on to the main chunk of work that we need to do in this video, and that is all of the prep work.
So the goal of our prep work can be simplified to two main things. We firstly want to fix all of the dented areas, and secondly, we want to scuff up all the surfaces so that when we apply the paint, it can more easily stick to those surfaces, and this is called paint adhesion. Now, our Ford Fusion has one main area of damage which we need to repair, which is this rear quarter. To fix this, Lav can use the panel hammer to try and reshape the metal, but mainly he's going to use filler. And whilst this is the main piece of damage on the car, there were actually a few very minor dents in other areas that honestly I couldn't really see, but Lav easily spotted them. And because a new paint job is really going to expose any tiny little dent that a car may have, it's important that we get all of these dents repaired. And whilst Lav was doing that, I could start with scuffing up the surfaces in the door shuts with some Scotch-Brite. And I also had to scotch all of the plastic trims as well. So going back to Lav, once all of the areas of filler that he'd applied were dry, he could then move on to sanding down those areas with the sanding block or the DA, and once all of that was done, we could move on to the next step.
Okay, so we are making some pretty good progress. Lav has now finished all of the filler work, which is all of these little patches here, and now we need to move on to the next step, which is applying the high build primer to these fillered sections. And the reason why we need to do this is because filler is actually porous, so it has loads of little microscopic holes in it, meaning that it's not a very good surface to paint on. So to fix that, we need to apply high build primer to these fillered sections that fills in all of those little microscopic holes, and then once the high build primer is dry, we can sand it back, and that will make a perfectly good smooth surface to apply the paint.
So to get this high build step done, Lav firstly had to do a little bit more work with the DA sanding tool, and once he was happy with that, it was then time to mask everything up. And yes, that includes all of the projects on the channel currently. We wanted to make sure to not get any high build primer on these cars. Once Lav had applied masking tape around all of the areas that he wanted to paint, he could then use this big plastic sheet to then cover up the rest of the car. After all of the masking had been finished up, it was then time to apply the high build primer. Now, not only is Lav applying this primer to the body panels, he's also applying it to the plastic trims which I had prepped up earlier. And this is to make sure that the finish on these plastic pieces is as smooth and looks as good as the bodywork. So now the high build primer has been applied, we are now on the home stretch for getting the prep work for the Fusion done. The main thing that Lav has to crack on with now is sanding down all of these areas that have had the high build applied, because this is what makes the surface really beautifully smooth for the paint. So whilst Lav was sanding down those plastic trims, I was getting on with stripping down the front bumper. This included removing the grills and also the fog lights. And once the bumper was completely stripped, it was then my job to go around every single nook and cranny of this bumper with a pad of Scotch-Brite to make sure that this was prepped up as well. And then it was time to remove the plastic sheet and all of the masking tape so that Lav could get on with even more sanding. And finally, after all of the areas of high build had been sanded down, it was then time for Lav to go over all of the remaining surfaces with the DA, and I could continue my mission to rub every single surface down with a pad of Scotch-Brite. Now, whilst this seems pretty simple, it took absolutely ages.
Okay, so that is now the vast majority of the prep work done on the shell of the Ford Fusion, except for the engine bay. So apart from the engine bay, we still need to do that. Every single other surface on this car is completely prepped up. So that's the doors, inside the door shuts, the wings, the roof, the rear quarter panel, the boot shut. Absolutely every surface is ready for paint. We've either sanded it and Scotch-Brited it or in some areas, obviously, we've done the repairs with the filler work and the high board primer. So now that is at a pretty good point, I want to show you something, because a big sort of complaint on the previous paint job video that we did on the channel was that we didn't install a spoiler on the Volkswagen Fox. If you remember, the purple Volkswagen Fox GTI build, that didn't have a spoiler on it, and to give it a proper GTI look, it probably would have looked a lot better with a spoiler. Now, the reason why I don't usually do this is because cars like the Volkswagen Fox and also the Ford Fusion do not have a lot of aftermarket support, and they generally, no one is making spoilers for them. However, we have come up with a bit of a solution for this car. So if I wade through all of the various parts that we've had to remove off the car, we can find the solution here. And this is a Mark VI Fiesta ST spoiler in performance blue. And we think that we'll be able to get this to fit, even though it's not for this car. So if I line it up, and if you stand back a little bit, you can see that I reckon that will work. We will have to drill some holes, and it will require some lining up and some wizardry, but I think this will work and look really good. So once we've got all of the prep done and all the paint job done, we'll fit this on to help make this car look even more like an ST.
So with our pre-paint work almost complete, the last things to do are to prep up both of the bumpers, and like I mentioned earlier, we also need to prep up the engine bay. So with the bumpers, Lav could firstly attack them with the DA to sand them down, and after a quick degrease, Lav could again apply high build primer to the bumpers as well.
Now to kingdom come, 'cause my mother told me as a child, boy, don't play around with fire, 'cause you might just end up getting burned. And I know the wicked never rest, so I always try my best, but there's some lessons hard for me to learn, like good boys don't play with bad.
And whilst we were waiting for the high build primer on the bumpers to dry, I could make sure to properly prep up the engine bay. All I was doing here was just using a wet pad of Scotch-Brite to scrub every single surface I could see. And then the final job to finish up all of the prep work was for Lav to sand down the bumpers.
The Fusion is now completely prepped up and ready to go. It has been an absolute shift getting the car to this point, because absolutely every single surface, all the bumpers, the wing mirrors, inside the engine bay, every single exterior surface, the plastics that go all the way around the car, all the high build primering, the repairs. It has been a really long process, and Lav has put in an absolute shift to help us get this done. So a massive thanks to him, but we are of course nowhere near done yet. So what we need to do is get the car on a recovery truck, get it ready for transport, and take it to the paint booth.
So we are now here at the paint booth, and I thought now would be a pretty good time to show you what colour we have gone for this car. And it is a pretty crazy colour. It's probably the craziest colour we've done on the channel to date, and it is in this pot. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Ford Focus RS Ultimate Green. It is a 3-stage colour. It has a crazy pearlescent on it, and I think it is going to look absolutely mental on the Fusion. I know we're going for an ST build, and this is an RS colour, but I've just had this in my head ever since getting this car. I think it will look mental in absolutely crazy bright green. So yeah, we've still got a load of jobs to do first before we can start laying the paint, but this is going to be very interesting.
So we can now finally begin Operation Paint the Ford Fusion in the most luminescent, obnoxious colour I could possibly find. And to do that, we firstly got to pull the car into this huge industrial paint booth. This sort of paint booth is how lorries and large commercial vehicles get painted, but for us, it just means that we can paint everything all together in one go. So it's pretty useful. Now, before we can start laying paint on the surface, I've firstly got to take all of the doors off the Fusion, and meanwhile, Lav can start hanging everything up and getting everything into the right positions. So the next job for Lav to get on with was to mask everything up. Now, this is a pretty time-consuming job, and it took several hours. A few of you might be wondering why I'm not giving Lav a hand with the masking, and it's because masking is deceptively difficult.
It looks easy on the surface of it, just putting pieces of tape down, but I promise you, it is actually a very skilled job to do it well and to do it quickly, and you actually need to know a few techniques to mask properly, and you only really learn these techniques if you've worked in a body shop. Now the masking is done, we can finally start the first step of this paint job, and that is the primer layer. Now this type of primer is commonly referred to as wet on wet primer, and its job is to help improve paint adhesion and to help create a smooth finish. Okay, so that is the first layer of paint now applied, the primer, and as you can see, it has made the Fusion completely white, which I think looks quite cool. But now that is done, we can move on to the first layer of the base coat, which is obviously that beautiful ultimate green. So with the shell of the Fusion and all of our different parts now painted in the primer, we could firstly mix up the base coat and then Lav could get it applied. Now, whilst what you're watching now is the first coat of the green being applied, Lav actually did 3 coats in total of this base colour. So that is stage 1 of our 3-stage paint process now complete, and as you can see, the Fusion is now bright green and it is looking really cool. But the paint itself right now is not very sparkly and not very shiny, and that's because we haven't done stage 2 or stage 3 yet. Stage 2 is the pearlescent, and that's what we've got to crack on with now, and then after that it is the clear coat. So the pearlescent is what we got on with next. Now, if you're wondering what this pearlescent is actually going to do from a visual perspective, it's just going to add this yellow sparkle effect to the paint, which is going to look insane when it is done. And on top of that, the clear coat is going to make the whole paint finish shiny. So once the pearlescent was done, Lav could then finish up with the clear coat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. That is our Ford Fusion painted in Focus RS Ultimate Green. And I have to say, I am in love with this colour now that I can see it in person. When you shine a light on this, it has a really gorgeous sparkle to it, which is going to look so good in the sunlight. So yeah, this is just going to look so cool when we take it outside. But for now, the main job is to unmask everything, and then we can get the panels back on the car and take it back to the unit for the reassembly. So Lav and I could then begin the process of getting everything unmasked and also getting the doors and the boot back onto the car. After that, we could take the car outside and get it on the recovery truck. And then it was time to get it back to the unit. So we are now back here at the unit, and we are going to start with my favourite part of this whole process, and that is the reassembly. All of the parts that we took off earlier now need to be refitted back onto the car, and we are now going to slowly but surely start to see what the Ford Fusion is going to look like with this paint job, with all the parts back on it. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to get back together was the engine bay, and this included installing parts like the ABS pump, the AC lines, the engine mounts, the strut brace, the scuttle panel, and also the washer jet piping from the washer tank to the jets that sit on the bonnet. Once everything in the engine bay was back together, the next thing to do was to get on the front panel.
Okay, so now that the front panel is fitted onto the Fusion, the next thing we need to do is build up the front bumper before that goes on the car. However, there is a bit of a problem. All of these plastics that were on the front bumper or at the front of the car, as you can see, they are looking very tired. It looks like the sun has faded them, and the same goes with the fog light surrounds and also the big main front grille. It just doesn't look very good. So I have bought these back to black plastic restorers. I didn't know which one to go for at Halfords, so I've just bought 2 of them, and hopefully these can make all of our plastics look as good as new before we fit everything on the car.
So with that plan in mind, I tried to apply the back to black plastic restorer onto the front grille, but it wasn't doing anything. And I had a look on the back of the box and it said I needed to leave it to set for 24 hours, which I didn't really want to do, so I changed plans at this point and decided to just paint everything in gloss black. And to do this, I of course made sure to Scotch-Brite the surfaces. I also had to mask up the silver area around the front grille. And another step I did off camera was to apply some plastic promoter. And once all of that was done, I could then apply some grey primer to the plastic pieces before coating it all in the gloss black. With that done, I could now build back up the front bumper, alongside installing the front grille onto the bonnet.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Wait, there's one more thing. Oh yeah. Oh my God, this is gonna be so cool. I'm not even a Ford fan, but this is changing my mind. I'm beginning to like it. Big satisfaction. Look at that! Oh, mate, with the light. Oh, bro, it's gonna look brand new.
So after clearly being very happy with the front grille, we could then get on the front bumper.
Okay, so to finish off the front end, we need to install our headlights. But as you can see, these ones are looking pretty tired. They've got sun damage on them and they just look a bit old. So I have gone out and purchased these beautiful new ones, which is exactly what the new front end needs. Some fresh, clean, clear headlights. So let's get these on, and then that is our front end done.
So I could quickly get those headlights fitted, and then that was the front end looking beautiful. With the front end now done, I could work on installing other parts like the indicators and the wing mirrors. Next up, we could start getting the rear back together, starting with the bumper. Followed by the tail lights, and also the rear brake light. One of the more satisfying jobs to do when building up the rear was to get all of the badges fitted on.
Now it's time to install the one which is going to make a considerable portion of my audience angry. The ST badge. So many people are going to be infuriated by this. Okay. Oh yeah!
The single most scary job we had to do in this whole reassembly process was to drill the holes for the spoiler. If we got this wrong, it would be a disaster.
Ooh, I'm in. Oh. Mate, what the hell? That went way too smooth.
So after confirming that the holes were perfectly drilled, we could then put on some Tiger Seal to the mating surface and get the spoiler installed, making sure to tighten up the bolts underneath as well.
That is on.
Then it was time for our brand new number plates to be fitted. Once that was done, the final thing that we'll be installing in this video are all of the plastic trims which go all around the car.
that is our Ford Fusion painted in RS Ultimate Green, and I think it looks sensational with the spoiler, with all of the plastic trims painted in the body colour. I think this turned out really well. I've been building this Ford Fusion, and in this video, we're going to install the craziest ST spec interior.
And that's because over the past few months, we've been on a mission to build a Ford Fusion ST, a model that Ford never actually made.
So to pursue this mission, we've already swapped out the standard 70 horsepower engine for a 150 horsepower engine that came from a Fiesta ST. After that, we installed a load of handling upgrades like a full ST brake conversion, Fiesta ST wheels, and a whole lot more. Most recently, we have also completed a crazy paint job with a real Focus RS colour called Ultimate Green, which looks absolutely mental. So today, the plan is to install a full ST spec interior to match everything that we've done so far. And by the end of the video, you'll see a crazy transformation which will help turn our Fusion into even more of an ST. Okay, so the plan in this video is to make the interior look as good as the exterior, because I think the Ultimate Green looks sensational, and a lot of you would have watched the last video, and I think it just came out so well, this colour. It's probably my favourite we've done on the channel. So the interior needs to match it. It needs to be as good as the exterior, or else it will let the car down. So we are going again with an Ultimate Green theme for the interior, and we've got a load of genuine ST parts all reupholstered in Ultimate Green. It looks so good, but you're gonna have to wait a little bit later on to see all of those parts. We've got door cards, we've got rear benches, we've got, well, a rear bench, we've also got the front seats as well. It looks so good. But for now, the first job I want to tackle is stripping the interior down. So the rear bench needs to come out, the front seats, but also the sort of upper plastics on the interior, because these upper plastics are all this sort of cream colour, which I am not the biggest fan of, and I'm not sure whether the STs would have had this, but it doesn't really scream performance version to me. So we're going to take out the plastics and also the headliner, which are all in that cream colour, and get them either dyed or painted in black.
So I could go ahead and begin Operation Strip the Interior Down, and I could start by taking out the front seats.
Okay, that is chair number 1. Number 2. Okay, so next we've got to remove the rear bench. That's got to be the simplest rear bench removal ever.
I just did not expect that to be held in by 2 bolts.
Seat. Nice. That is all the seats out. Next up, steering wheel. 1, 2, 3. Is there anyone out there who thinks this is an efficient way of steering wheel removal? Come on, baby. Right, that's 1. Still have no idea how I did that. Yes. Let's go. There we go. Steering wheel is out. Now we're going to do all of the plastics and also take out the headliner. 1 screw. Perfect. Okay, so now everything in the roof is off, we can go ahead and take out the headliner. Ready? I didn't even touch it. There we go. Headliner. It's out. It's out.
So now the interior's been fully stripped, the next step was to take all of those cream coloured plastics and get them painted in black. Now before doing this, we made sure to Scotch-Brite all of the plastics with water to clean them up, and as you can see here, we also used some plastic promoter, and once all of that was done, we could then apply the black paint. But whilst I'm doing that, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I found out that 82% of you watching are not subscribed. That is most of you watching this video right now. So if you do enjoy the content and you want to see the Fusion absolutely sent to the moon, make sure to subscribe as it's completely free and you can always change your mind later on. So now all of the plastics were painted, the next thing to do was to dye the headliner.
Okay, so that is now all of the plastics painted in black, and also our headliner is dyed black. And we are just waiting for this to dry, so we have stuck it underneath an infrared heater to sort of speed up the process. But whilst that dries, I think the next thing we're going to do is install our door handles, because a lot of you may have noticed in the previous video, we just haven't installed these, and that is because it is quite time consuming to do. Alongside these door handles, we need to install the window glass as well as the inner door cards together. You sort of have to do it all in one. You can't just do one at a time. So that's why the door handles aren't in. And alongside that, we also need to do a few little jobs in the boot, like reconnecting up the loom, the reg lights, the lock as well needs to be reconnected up. The inner trim needs to go back in. There's a few little things with that as well that we need to crack on with now. So let's get on with it.
So to help us out with this job, Lav, who gave us a hand painting the Fusion in the previous video, actually came over to the unit to help me with this job because, as I mentioned, it is pretty time consuming.
Step one, we need to fit the inner door card. There we go. Now we can line it up. Next step, bolt it on.
So next I could focus on getting the locking mechanism lined up with the holes in the door.
You're very quiet there, Jav.
Hold in this position.
Wait, stay there. This is what this guy's doing to film this.
I'm behind the GoPro. So I'm
That is legendary. I just need something little to pry. That's pretty good, I'd say. So now we can put the rest of the bolts in, I believe. I'm a believer, I wouldn't leave her if I tried. I never saw her face. That was a banger, isn't it? I'm a believer.
song, it matches the theme of the car.
It does, we got Shrek. Yeah.
Shrek car. It just needs the ears.
It just needs the ear. It does need the
It
ears.
does.
It needs some like really big wing mirrors. Lovely. Right, next step is the window. Let's get it in. Right, window in. 2 bolts in there you've got to do up to secure the window, I believe. That seems in to me. Next thing, window rubbers. Oh, beautiful. Oh, yes. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, that's how you do it. Oh, beautiful. Perfect. Job done. Well, not yet, actually. That was a whole job in itself.
So now that was finished, the final thing to get the driver's door completely back together was to install the door handle.
And that goes in here. Okay, that can go on. Boom. Beautiful. All done.
So with both of the front doors now done, Lav and I could then crack on with doing the rear doors. And after all of the doors were back together, I could also do the boot. So now the door handles, door rubbers, window glass, window regulators and inner door cards have all been fitted back into the Fusion. There's one more thing we need to do before we can start building back up the interior, and that's a modification that I think this car desperately needs, and that is a set of window tints. So to get all of the rear windows on the Fusion tinted, D5 Graphics have come down to give us a hand. Now, often when you see windows getting tinted, the tint will firstly be applied to the outside to cut the tint into the correct shape, and then after that, it will then be applied to the inside of the window. And as for the tint we went for, it was a nice dark 20% tint that's not quite as dark as a limo tint, but is dark enough to give us that blacked out look.
Well, there we have it. The tints are fitted on the Fusion, and doesn't that just look so much better? Like, it contrasts the paint so nicely, and I think if they made a Fusion ST from the factory, they definitely would have given it some nice window tints. So, good job. Thank you, D5 Graphics. But now that is done, we can finally get on with refitting our headliner and also all of our black plastics which we painted earlier. We are making some pretty good progress now. That's the headliner in and also all of those interior plastics. But now that is done, we can move on to 2 jobs that we need to do before I show you all of those awesome ST parts that I mentioned earlier. And the first of those jobs is actually to do with these gear selector cables. Now, these are what connect up the shifter inside the car to the gearbox and obviously allow you to select what gear you want to be in. And this cable is broken. There's a bit of plastic sheathing just there, and as you can see, it has snapped. And I have a bit of an admission, that was me when we installed the engine for the first time. So it is completely my fault, but that has now stopped us from shifting gears properly. It's so annoying. You literally can't get it into third at all. So to fix that, we have a brand new gear shifter and also new gear selector cables. So this should allow us to shift gears. So let's get it in.
Well, the first thing we had to do was remove the old gear selector and cables, and to do that, we firstly had to take apart the center console.
I feel like that is just a yank, do you know what I mean?
I don't see any what's here.
It's got to be a yank, isn't it? This is when we just pull it and it just shatters into a million pieces. Right, let's try it. There we go. Little plug under there to undo. And now this can come out. Lovely. Definitely needs a clean. Oh, look at the state of this. Ugh, definitely needs a hoover. Okay, so we can see that is our standard gear selector. The gear selector cables go under there, and then there is a bolt just there, and one just on that side as well. Very difficult to see, but we've got to undo those, and then also undo those 4. Should come out, and then we can replace it with a new one. There's one. There we go. Here's our old, broken gear selector and cables.
So with the old gear selector out, I could quickly give the carpet a hoover, and once it was all clean, I could then get the new one installed. Now, there's no real technique to doing this properly. You've just sort of got to try and wiggle the old cables through the tiny little hole in the bulkhead. So with our new gear selector now fitted, the final thing for me to do was to get everything back together. And now that's done, the last job we have to do before I can show you the new ST spec interior is to install a new stereo. The current stereo in the Fusion has no Bluetooth capability and is just generally very dated, so it definitely needs replacing. After the stereo was in, I could then finish off by going around and getting all of the speakers fitted.
Right, I think we're finally ready now to see the ST parts, aren't we?
Let's do it.
I've been excited to show you all these ST parts for the whole video. So without further ado, here they are.
So this is the Fusion's new ST spec interior. Now, this did cost a lot of money, but I have to say it is absolutely perfect for our car. Stuff like the seats and the rear bench have come straight out of a Fiesta ST, and as you can see, a lot of it is draped in gorgeous black leather. But the main party piece of this interior is that the centers of the seats and also the fabric sections of the door cards have been reupholstered in the exact, genuine ultimate green fabric that you'll find in the Focus RS's. And alongside all of this stuff, we also have a Fiesta ST steering wheel, a Fiesta ST gear knob, and we've even managed to track down and buy small details like the ST door seals and the ST aluminium pedals. It's safe to say that we've gone all out with this interior, and I think it is going to look ridiculously good in our Fusion.
Now all that's left to do is get it all fitted and see what it looks like.
So I was seriously excited to start getting all of these ST parts fitted into the Fusion, and the first things I decided to crack on with was getting the steering wheel, gear knob and pedals fitted.
Oh yeah. Oh god, we've got 2 ST badges already, 10 points. Now for the aluminium. Actually, we've got a lot of aluminium in here. We've got this aluminium, well, that is actually aluminium, I think. So, yeah. And then the pedals, and then also the door sills. We've got like a secondary, and the wheels, and actually that little surround around the front grille. We've got like a little secondary aluminium theme going on alongside the black and the green. Cool, right, pedals. Look at the difference. Just looks way smarter than that. Yeah. Plug him in. Nice, and then these ones should just be covers. So I should just be able to peel these off. There we go.
Now, as for getting the clutch and the brake pedal covers fitted, it was actually deceptively difficult. It did take me a fair few minutes to get the covers fully wrapped around the pedals, but once it was done, it looked amazing. Next, it was in with the rear bench.
That should be one seat. That's in. Look at that. That is rear bench sorted.
Installing the rear door cards was the next thing I wanted to crack on with, and this is a nice, easy job. Once the rear door cards were done, I could then move on to the front door cards.
Beautiful. Done. Now it is time for the best part, the front seats. Let's get them in. And then I'm gonna plug in the plug.
The more ST parts we were fitting into the Fusion, the better it was looking. And at this point, it really felt like the hard work that we put into this car was starting to pay off.
Hell yeah. Oh wow.
It looks mega.
That looks so good. Oh mate, it just looks unreal.
So cool.
This is gonna look, oh my god. Best interior we've done on the channel. It definitely is.
100%.
Oh my dear lord, this thing looks bloody beautiful. You're not gonna see this, but you're gonna hear the click. Are you ready? Click. No Ford Fusion in the history of humankind has ever looked this good. I actually don't care. Coolest Ford Fusion in the world. Somebody showed me their Ford Fusion that's cooler than this one.
Honestly.
It's not. This is the best thing ever.
So the final things to do to finish off our ST interior was to get some new floor mats fitted, and also to get the ST door sills stuck down. And after the Tiger Seal had dried, we were then completely finished, and I can now introduce to you the Fusion ST's interior.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, just take a look at the Fusion's new interior. This looks banging. I am absolutely in love with this interior. The seats, I've had a sit in them, they are so comfortable. But the main thing about this interior is just how cool it looks with the ultimate green fabric reupholstered everywhere. it looks amazing. This is my Ford Fusion, and in this video, we're going to make it as fast as possible.
I bought this Ford Fusion a few months back for the bargain price of £600, and we've been modifying it to create a Ford Fusion ST, a model that Ford never actually made. The car started off as a pretty slow 1.4 litre commuter, but since then we've installed this 2 litre performance engine that's come straight out of a Fiesta ST. Not only did we install the engine, but we also fitted ST wheels, brakes, suspension, and a full ST spec interior. And on top of all that, we painted the car in a real Focus RS colour called Ultimate Green. But to do this properly, we had to take back out the ST engine.
So today, the plan is to not only reinstall the engine, but we've also got a load of power modifications to make this Fusion absolutely rapid.
And by the end of this video, you'll see the finished product of the Fusion ST, and you'll find out how much power it makes. So we want to create more power. Now, theoretically, this is pretty simple. All we have to do is get more air and more fuel in our cylinders to make a bigger bang or a bigger combustion.
Now, of course, making power is all to do with the engine. And in the past, a lot of times, we've just added big turbos and sort of boost to make our builds faster. But that is not the plan for this.
You see, because we've already done a few big turbo projects, I wanted to change it up with the Fusion. I want to see how much power we can squeeze out of the 2 litre Duratec engine without adding any superchargers or turbochargers. Now, the standard output of this engine from the factory is 150 horsepower. So the goal in this video is to try and get it over 200 horsepower using only naturally aspirated modifications.
Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, and in this video, we have got practically every single modification possible to make an engine faster, naturally aspirated. But the first modification we've got is a little bit different because it isn't actually going to increase the power output of the engine, it's going to help us put the power down. So this is a limited slip differential from Quaife. Now, not only is this going to help us in a straight line, getting the grip, but also it's really going to help us in the corners. And this is how it works.
So most cars use something called an open differential, which when turning lets the left and right wheels spin at different speeds. But the problem is, when one of those wheels loses grip, all of the engine's power is sent to the wheel that's slipping. When this happens, it overall reduces your grip and acceleration. But a limited slip differential solves this by sending some of the power to the wheel with the most grip. Now, it still allows the wheels to spin at different speeds during corners, but it just limits the excessive wheel spin on one side. And this helps the car maintain grip, which in turn helps its acceleration. So to get this limited slip differential installed, the first thing to do is to remove the gearbox off the engine. And to do this, there's several 13mm gearbox housing bolts that we've got to undo.
So we've had to get the gearbox up on a chair to get this last bolt. Ooh.
So after getting the gearbox up on the chair to help us remove the last few bolts, we could then separate the gearbox from the engine.
Gearbox off. Nice. Okay, so gearbox is off, and now what we need to do to get the limited slip diff installed is pull this whole thing apart and go inside the workings of a gearbox, which to this day I'm convinced is black magic. I have absolutely no idea how it works, which is why I've got my friend Andrew. Andrew's going to give me a hand with this, and the first thing we're going to do is take off all the bolts that we can see and just open this gearbox up. So let's get cracking.
So Andrew is actually an ex-gearbox technician, so he's the perfect person to guide me through and give me a hand with installing this limited slip differential. So as I mentioned, the first job is to completely strip apart this gearbox, which basically involves just undoing every single bolt we can see.
There we go. Oh, look at those. That looks like gears to me.
That is, so that will be your 5th gear.
Ah, interesting.
So after taking off that end cap, Andrew can then get on with removing both of the gears.
There we go.
And to fully remove 5th gear, Andrew needs to use this special tool to pull it out.
There we go. And there we go. 1/5 gear.
So with all the gears in that sort of end cap now out, that unveiled a few more bolts for us to undo. And then that whole end cap section can be removed.
All right.
After that, there's 2 big metal clips that need to be taken off.
I'm gonna get rid of the cap. Yeah, because they ping.
Oh, is it Tony?
Cameraman down.
Right, there we go, circlips out.
The next job is to physically split the gearbox in half, and to do this, there are a lot of bolts to undo.
Right, there we go.
So once all of those bolts are out, we can then use the pry bar to separate the 2 halves of the gearbox housing.
There we go.
Oh, look at that. So that is what the inside of a gearbox looks like.
So this is the inside of a gearbox. You can see on the right we have our lay shaft, in the middle we have the main shaft with all the gears and the synchros, but most importantly in the bottom left of our gearbox, as you can see, we have our open differential. So this is what we want to replace with our Quafer limited slip differential, and to do this Andrew has to firstly strip all of these different components out of the gearbox. So here you can see it's pretty interesting, the difference between our old open differential and the new limited slip differential. But either way, Andrew could go ahead and get the new limited slip diff installed into the gearbox housing.
There we go. One
Nice.
LSD fitted.
And then it is just the long, skillful task of getting the gearbox built back up again. So whilst we leave Andrew to build that gearbox up, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, because my analytics have told me that 76% of you are currently not subscribed. That is most of you watching this video. Subscribing massively helps out, and you can always change your mind later on.
Okay, so that is our limited slip differential now installed into the gearbox, and everything is back together. A massive thanks goes to Andrew for doing that for us, because I wouldn't have had a clue. But now that we are done with that, we can move back to the engine. So here we have the first upgrades that we're going to fit to the engine. Now starting off, we've got this clutch kit. Now this is an organic clutch. It's a Helix Auto Sport clutch, and this is basically an in-between of a really hardcore advanced race clutch and a normal clutch. It's like a nice in-between, so it's not super heavy, but it will manage to hold all the power that we're going to be putting through this engine. And on top of that, we also have a lightened flywheel. Now this is a game changer for making it a little bit more power, but making also the engine feel more alive when you're driving it. It helps you rev up faster, and also it should give us a tiny bit more power through drivetrain, less drivetrain losses as well. And to finish off, we're going to install this exhaust manifold. This is from Miltech, and this should help increase our overall power output of this engine by helping it breathe a little better as well. And of course, that'll be after a remap. So let's get all this fitted. Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Ollie, how enthusiastic are you?
Yes, I love Fords.
Ollie hates Fords, so doing this is like against everything he believes in. But we're doing it. Let's go.
So to get these modifications installed, Ollie could start by taking off the old clutch.
Oh, nice one.
And meanwhile, I could take off the old exhaust manifold. And as I was doing this, Ollie was on to removing our old flywheel.
Flywheel off. Right, I've got to do some angle grinding. Off she comes. Yeah, I mean the exhaust bolts are being predictably stubborn, but yeah, almost there. Well, actually not almost there. We've just started. There we go.
And of course, because these exhaust manifold bolts have been through a million different heat cycles, I had to use a blowtorch to remove them. And before removing the manifold, Ollie could get our new lightened flywheel fitted.
Time to talk them up.
And once that was done, I could undo the final bolts on the manifold and remove it.
There we go. Old exhaust manifold off.
So, just got the new flywheel in. Looks lovely. And now we're getting the new clutch in.
So making sure to use the clutch alignment tool, Ollie could go ahead and get the new clutch fitted. And meanwhile, I could swap over our lambda sensor from the old exhaust manifold to our new exhaust manifold.
Yes. That is all thanks to the blowtorch, really. There we go.
Once the lambda sensor was in, I could get the new Miltech manifold fitted. And after going over and checking all the nuts were tight, that was job done.
Okay, so exhaust manifold is on, clutch has now been fitted as well. Now, the next thing we've got to do is get the gearbox back on the engine. Now, firstly, we can install our lovely new clutch release bearing, and then it is just a task of getting this on.
So I could quickly install the new clutch release bearing, which is really easy. There's just 3 bolts that hold it into place.
Fitted. Let's get the gearbox on.
Now, getting this gearbox reinstalled is actually pretty easy. Because it's a nice small gearbox and a nice small engine, you don't need to be quite literally the Incredible Hulk to get this refitted.
Yeah, I think we put the bolts in now. That looks pretty good to me.
So after getting the gearbox lined up, I could then do up all the bolts.
Okay, so gearbox is on, and now we have another upgrade. Take a look. These, for the eagle-eyed viewers among you, will know that they are a set of camshafts. We've got 2 of them, an exhaust cam and an inlet cam. And these are going to be one of the main things which helps increase our horsepower on this engine. And basically, I'll compare it when we take the old cams out, but the reason why this is going to help increase our horsepower is because you see these camshaft lobes on here. They are a lot bigger and they have basically more lift on them. So when this cam is rotating, it's going to hold the valves open for longer, and it's also going to make them open a bit more as well. So that's going to allow more exhaust gases out and more air in to make more power. So that is the plan. We've got to get these fitted now, and it is a bit of a process to get them installed, but let's get started.
Now, alongside installing these camshafts, we're also going to fit a new timing chain because, you know, we're in there, so we might as well. And of course, the first step is to remove our cam cover.
There we go.
That then unveiled our dual overhead camshaft setup with both our exhaust and inlet camshafts. So the next step to get these out is to remove the camshaft caps. Then we can remove the sprockets or the cogs that sit on the end of the camshafts, and then the camshafts themselves can be removed. So now the old camshafts are out, you can see from this comparison the difference between the camshaft lobes on our old versus the new camshafts. And you can imagine that if these were spinning around at 1,000,000 miles an hour, why the cams on the left would open the valves up for a bit longer than the cams on the right. But we aren't on to fitting these cams just yet because we firstly got to do a bit more stripping down of this engine to get to the timing chain. Because as I mentioned, we're replacing this as well. Ooh. So after removing the auxiliary belt and a few of the pulleys, I can then start undoing all of the bolts for the front cover. And once all of those bolts are undone, I can take the front cover off.
And that is our chain. So we're going to be replacing this. We don't need this old one anymore. The next thing to do is to take off these tensioners. Okay, so that is everything on our engine now stripped off that we're going to strip off. Now we can move on to installing everything back on, like our new timing chain kit and also our new cams. Now, if you have a look down here, we have our new cams and also these 2 tools on the floor. So these are basically our timing tools. Now, this pin is going to help us time up the bottom end. It's basically going to help us get the bottom end to top dead center. I'm sure a few of you maybe have heard that phrase before. It's going to get it to top dead center, and also this sort of bar looking thing is going to get the cams to their top dead center position as well. So we basically need to get both of the top end and the bottom end in their perfect positions before bolting everything down and getting it all back together. So let's give it a go.
So, to make sure that the valves are opening and closing at the right time in relation to when the pistons are going up and down, as I said, we need to get both the bottom end and the top end of the engine in their top dead center position. And to do that for this engine, it is pretty easy. For the bottom end, we can insert the timing pin into this little hole in the side, and when we turn the engine over, the bottom end will lock into its TDC position.
That is now locked, meaning the cylinder 1 piston is all the way at the top, and because that pin is now in, that's locking that in top dead center. So we now know bottom end is in top dead center, which is good.
Then for the top end of the engine, we can loosely fit the camshafts into place. And then we can place the other timing tool into these little grooves in the ends of the camshafts. So in short, as long as the pin is in the bottom end and the bar is through the cams at the top, the engine will be timed up. And we can then go ahead and fit our timing chain on and all the other various pieces to get this back together.
That is our timing chain on.
So with the timing chain on, all that was left to do was to torque all of the bolts down to the correct torque settings in the correct order, and just like that, our new timing chain and new cams were installed.
We are turning over. Look at that. That is confirmation that we have done everything correctly. There we go. That is a massive relief that that now turns over, because if it didn't turn over and we felt like resistance of a valve hitting a piston, we would have done it wrong and we would have to take everything off and do it again. But that is now done. So with that now complete, we can start refitting everything back onto this engine, starting with, I think, this front cover.
So to get this on, we firstly got to clean up all of the mating surfaces, and then we can apply some sealant. And then I can very carefully get this front cover fitted back on. Once it's on, I can bolt the front cover down. Also, all of the pulleys can be refitted. Our fresh new auxiliary belt needs to go on as well.
Oh yeah, top tip, everyone. Make sure to take a picture of how the aux belt looked before you take it off, which is what I did here, luckily. The only reason why I knew to do that is because I've been in this exact situation before where I've had no clue how it goes back on. So make sure to do that if you're ever doing this job. There we go, that's on. Yes, look at that. Aux belt, fitted.
And then to finish off, making sure to use a new cam cover gasket, we can get the cam cover fitted.
Okay, so that is our engine now fully back together with our new camshafts, our new exhaust manifold, our lightened flywheel, upgraded clutch, limited slip differential, and new timing chain, and new auxiliary belt, all done. But now that is finished, we are ready to get the engine fitted back into the Fusion, but we still have one very, very exciting modification to install to this engine, and it's arguably the best one we're doing in this video. And to install that, we are going to have to remove the inlet manifold. So the plan going forward is we need to remove that, then mount the engine up in the Ford Fusion, and then we can get that exciting mod installed.
So I could quickly whip off the inlet manifold in preparation for quite possibly one of the coolest modifications we've ever fitted to one of my builds.
There we go. That is one inlet manifold. Why was that so hard to remove? There's so much that goes into that.
And once it was off, it was just a case of getting the Fusion on the ramp, ready to fit the engine back in. Now, before getting the engine back in, Toby and I had to quickly take off the headlights, the front bumper, and also the front panel. And then after taking off the wheels, and also the subframe, we could move the engine into place, ready to get it fitted.
Okay, so that is the engine below the car. You guys know the drill. You've seen me do this 10,000 million times. We are now going to drop the engine. Nope, No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna drop the car over the engine and get it bolted up.
So the trick is, when doing this, is to try and line up the engine in the engine bay as best as we can when the car's coming down, and then we can bolt up both the driver's side and passenger side engine mounts. So now the engine's fitted, I can show you the final modification.
So these are the final power upgrade that will fit to the Fusion, and it's what I'm most excited for. Now, for those of you who have modified cars yourself, you probably know that these are a set of individual throttle bodies, and the reason why I'm so excited for these is obviously they're going to add a lot more power because we're doing a power video, but these are going to sound absolutely biblical. Like, these are going to sound so epic. It's just going to make this car a completely different beast to drive.
So to put it simply, a throttle body is basically just a flap that lets air into the engine. And most cars will have a singular throttle body followed by an inlet manifold. And that's because this setup is simpler to manufacture and because there's less complicated moving parts, so it's just a more reliable solution for air delivery. But individual throttle bodies differ from this because they give each inlet port its own throttle body, or air flap. This gives the air less distance to travel from the atmosphere to our cylinders, which massively improves the responsiveness of the engine. And the lack of restriction along the intake path also really benefits high RPM power. But the main benefit, if I'm honest, is they sound like this. So with that clarified, let's get our individual throttle bodies installed. And to do this, it's not too bad. We just have to bolt it up and then manage a few vacuum lines.
Bring satisfaction for me now. Bring satisfaction for me now.
Okay, so that is the engine in with now those beautiful ITBs, and that is all the modifications that we're going to fit to this car, well, to the engine in this video. We still have one more upgrade to install, but the main job now is to just get everything back together in this engine bay. That is the subframe, the exhaust, the drive shafts, the wiring loom, the cooling system, the clutch line, the gear selectors, and just absolutely everything to make this car running and driving. And also, Andrew has come back to give us a hand with this, and we should make quick work of it. Let's go. Now, we are very close to getting, well, we are very close to the point where we can give the Fusion a start, but there is something we have to do first, and it is to do with this, which is the old power steering reservoir. Now this, if you follow me around, used to sit there, but because of the ITBs, it now doesn't fit. But also, on top of that, this is just a really bad place for a power steering reservoir because it gets really hot there and this can boil. Bad design. So we have purchased this, which is essentially a power steering relocation kit, and what it's going to do is, I think it will go something like that and sit around there somewhere, and that is going to allow us to run the ITBs, but on top of that it's just a way better place to put the power steering reservoir. So we're going to whack this on, and then it is time to see if this thing starts.
So before installing that relocation kit, I had to quickly fill up the gearbox with oil. I could also connect up the gear selectors. And also the engine oil needed topping up as well. And then Andrew and I could get the power steering relocation kit installed. And after getting it fitted, Andrew could finish up by putting in the fluid. So it is now time to see if this engine will start, and I was pretty nervous, to be honest.
Okay, I think we are now ready for a start. Andrew, whenever you are ready, my friend. What happened there?
It may just be upset because of the ITBs, because it's not mapped. We'll try it.
Potentially, okay. It did run briefly. Very weird. Not 100% sure what's happening there. Do you think it could be, has it got fuel? We got fuel? Like, I know we obviously have fuel, but how much have we got? Is it like?
Just below a quarter of a tank.
Just below quarter? Okay. It's like the thing is, it fires up. Couldn't be a timing issue, could it? This is what I was worried about. What's that? Tick, 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 tick.
So the fusion wouldn't start, and at this point I really couldn't figure out what was going on here. Now, we've driven the Fusion with this engine before and we didn't have a single problem, so my head immediately went to the stuff that we've done to the engine in this video, and the two things that were really shouting out to me was the timing and also the ITBs. Now, if we got the timing wrong, this could be causing the cam sensor and the crank sensor to be giving the ECU information that it doesn't like, so it just shuts the engine off. But I wasn't too convinced with this theory because I was positive that we'd done the timing correctly. So to investigate whether the ITBs were causing it, we plugged in the diagnostic tool, and as you can see, all of these different codes started coming up and they were all to do with the throttle. So I came to the conclusion that to run these ITBs even on idle, we need to have them mapped in. So at this point, I made the decision to take the ITBs back off the car, reinstall the standard inlet manifold to then drive the Fusion to the mappers to get the ITBs fitted there, which would then allow us to get it all mapped in.
Okay, that is the standard inlet manifold back on the engine. Pained me to do that, but I guess let's see if this engine starts now. I'm really hoping this works. I was not expecting that to work.
Timing seems alright.
Yeah, the timing seems fine.
Yeah.
It's because it was done by professionals, that's why.
Exactly.
Well, that was a massive relief, and we're going to get the ITBs fitted later on, so don't worry, we're still fitting them. But for now, we could work on getting the final button-up jobs finished on the Fusion to take it to the mappers. So after connecting up all the coolant lines, I could top up the coolant, and then it was just a case of getting the front end of the car completely built back up again. So with all of the work now done to the Fusion, we can finally go and take it to get remapped.
Okay, we have arrived. Let's get the ITBs fitted.
So we've brought the Fusion here to JamSport, not only to get the ITBs refitted, but also to get the car remapped to hopefully over 200 horsepower. The technicians here got to work straight away with removing the old inlet manifold and then reinstalling the ITBs. And after finishing up with the install, they could also upload a base map to our ECU to allow the engine to run with the ITBs.
The Fusion is now running. Take a listen. And our individual throttle bodies are fitted as well. So that is a big win. In fact, I'll rev it so you can hear it. So yeah, that sounds pretty good. Now what we have to do is get the Fusion into the dyno room and get a custom remap on it to make as much power as possible.
So this is it. How much horsepower will our Ford Fusion ST make with all the modifications we've added in this video? We started this build over half a year ago and we have put so much time and money and effort into this car. But will it repay us for all of the work we've done with a horsepower figure over 200? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's do some power runs.
Okay. It is very, very loud. Like, it is like hurting my ears loud.
So now the Fusion's on the dyno and we're all ready to go, we could do the first power run.
the loudest thing ever. I can't describe how loud this car is. We really need like 10,000 silencers in there, just making it quieter, because this is currently, we're never getting on a track day in this car, ever.
So after that first run, I eagerly went in to go and find out how much the Fusion made, and it was 197 horsepower, which is a little bit disappointing. I asked Jamie about this, and he seemed to think that our engine wasn't too healthy, and not to expect too much more. But he did say he had a few other tricks up his sleeve to try and get a bit more horsepower out of it, so let's see what it does.
Okay, so Jamie doesn't seem to think it's going to make too much more over 200 brake horsepower, because the engine might not be the healthiest, he's saying, but let's find out. Over 200 brake, that's all I need. That'll be loads of fun then, you know? That'll be loads of fun.
199 brake, slow.
Wait, 109, yeah, that's exactly it. If it's 199 horsepower, let's go to the scrap. If it's 201 horsepower, that's all we need. Okay, so that is all of our power runs done, and the Fusion made 199 horsepower. I'm not even joking, it literally just missed out on the 200 mark, but this car is all about how it sounds and how it drives, and these engines, with the mods we've done, should actually get 205 to maybe even 210 horsepower, so we're losing 5 or 10 horsepower from somewhere. Jamie here seemed to think it was something to do with maybe our valves weren't seating properly, or maybe there's some blow-by past the piston rings. It could be a million different things, but to be honest, I don't really care. This car, that is plenty of horsepower enough. It's going to sound absolutely epic, and it's going to be a load of fun to drive, which is the main thing. But speaking of getting it out for a drive, let's go and see what it's like. Okay, so we are now out in the Fusion, and I'm not even going to waffle. I am just going to cut straight to the chase. We're down to third. It revs so quick now because of the flywheel. And then floor it. This thing, it pulls so nice. It's such a nice linear pull, and the downshifts you can get. It is a lot of fun. This car is a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, I think that is job done.
And all that's left to do is to show you the finished product. So if you did go on to enjoy this video and this whole series, remember to like and remember to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.